So it's starting, there we go, we're live.
So welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our special meeting of council, and that's today, July the 29th. So welcome everybody, council and staff and any public who may be watching. Before we adopt the agenda, if we can please have a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. I do have a motion, and I'll be waiting to get a mover and seconder, but the motion is that the special meeting of council dated, council agenda dated July the 29th, 2020 be approved as circulated. Moved by Jeff and seconded by Karen. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And I also will remind all of council that if you do have a disclosure of interest, you can declare it now or anytime during the meeting. And we're going to move straight into our first and only report of our municipal officers. And this one is going to be yours, Jasmine, and this is on the electronic meeting procedural bylaw amendment. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Jasmine, please.
Thank you very much, Reeve. So this report is detailing some new and enacting some the new legislation put under Bill 197. So as you know, during the state of emergency in the province of Ontario, there was a municipal act amendment that was passed that allowed municipalities to have members count as quorum over electronic participation. So the province has allowed a permanent amendment that does allow members to count towards quorum participating electronically in meetings. So this does mean that should council choose, meetings could be held electronically for all or some members. So we have some challenges related to the installation of internet at Rosedale Hall. So at the meeting, we did discuss at our last meeting potentially having an in-person meeting at August 4th, but it would be definitely appropriate for council to make the final decision related to internet. And in order to continue the live streaming meetings, even if they are in person, the good internet at Rosedale Hall is essential. So in order to participate in meetings electronically, what I'm asking you to make a decision on today is amending the township procedural bylaw to allow the use of electronic participation in meetings, state whether members can participate in both open and closed meetings, and state whether or not members can participate, whether or not they count towards quorum. I will ask today if council wants to provide direction on the method of electronic participation of members. So it would just be confirming that you're happy with the method of participation through Zoom. And then having the members of the public be able to watch proceedings through YouTube. So I have drafted a bylaw that does allow some or all of council members to participate electronically through all meetings. I did add a couple caveats, recognizing that this may be something that once we actually put it in place, there may be further amendments that need to happen just to make it so it works smoothly and easily for council. You're amending it now, but this is not like set in stone. We can change this later if it doesn't work as well as we want it to work. So essentially, at any time, electronic council or committee meeting may be held with some or all of members participating electronically. So in the year 2020, so I'm just detailing the amendments, my apologies. Council shall, accepting the year of 2020, the bylaw does state that council shall set the schedule of regular in-person or electronic meetings, which is normal. We do a normal practice that sets our kind of meeting schedule. But if there was some meetings in that time period, which would be better to hold electronically, we can make that decision at the time, or council can make that decision. However, in 2020, the bylaw reads that council can make the decision every month. And this way, if there is, say, a spike in cases, or if there's a change in the pandemic situation, council can make a fairly fluid decision on whether to hold in-person or electronic only meetings. In terms of meetings in which is intended to be a physical meeting, but one member of council wants to participate electronically, there's a method for that member to let the clerk know. That way, you know, technological accommodations can be made. So we did note that members are counted towards quorum, can participate electronically, and that they can participate in either open or closed meetings. So notice of meetings shall be provided as normal meetings, and in all meetings, and I want to make sure, because I wasn't as clear about this in the report, in like every meeting that we have, we are required to provide the ability for the public to watch the proceedings at a minimum. So that counts for any level of electronic participation of council. So, and that is a piece of, that's enshrined in the Municipal Act. So I just wanted to be clear that there won't be any like electronic meetings that take place without providing the ability to have members of the public at a minimum watch the proceedings. So, so just wanted to make sure that's clear. So, so I guess I open the floor to questions related to some of the amendments, and then I'd like to step back and then talk about the use of technology, if council's happy with the technology that we're using right now.
Jasmine, you just mentioned watch, but you want to make sure that the public can watch, but we also, to be clear, we also mean watch and listen.
Yes.
Yeah, to watch and listen. Okay, so we'll open it up to council, and I see Karen is first. Thanks.
Just a question in reference to, is there a limit, say, for example, a councillor can't really go like 3 months to Florida, for example, and do all their meetings via electronic, because we can't, right? They can't do that sort of thing?
Well, the way that the amendment is worded is they would count, if they were participating electronically, they would count towards quorum. So it wouldn't be, say, an absence that would take the, you know, the absence measures wouldn't take effect. So technically, yes, they could.
We did have that discussion several years ago, Karen, and I think the thought was that you know, that's not a good direction to go in. It certainly is a fabulous direction to be in now with COVID-19. I think it's 100%, but I guess that would be something that we'd have to maybe discuss in the future when COVID is maybe lifted. So we'll have to wait. But any other questions from council? Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing is right, and I think we're gonna go with COVID with being in play. We're gonna go electronic until this is over, and then yeah, and then let's readdress it, and we'll readdress it hopefully in the near future. We'll readdress it again to kind of go back, because I think that we should be having members of council all present in the same place, in the same room, as much as we can when we're able to do that. So, but going forward, let's just stick with the electronic meetings altogether.
And I think it's really great in the report, Jasmine, that you also talk about, you know, in the future, we could in fact continue to do all our meetings virtually. But what's most important is that the public, not just watch and hear, but that the public are also able to ask questions at that same meeting. So that whatever we do in the future, that's probably the most important thing, I think, that we have to continue doing. So Karen?
Question, is there a thought that we're going to go to us in public or in presence, and then the public still watching because of the COVID restrictions?
Yes, and that's what I'm hoping we can talk about on August 4th. So I will
Okay.
have a big report on August 4th that will talk about the ability for us to install good internet at Rosedale. So unfortunately, that's our only facility that we can establish good social distancing for members of council. Our council chambers is very small. So, but we will talk about that on August 4th, and council can provide direction as far as when you want to start meeting in person and how you want that to look.
But I think it's also important that, and you sort of touched on it, Jasmine, that even if we do go back to live meetings, whether it be in the future at the chamber or at the hall, if a member of council does not feel safe, then I think that person should have the right to be able to continue as we are now, attending the meeting or participating in the meeting virtually.
Yes, and that's what this amendment will do.
Thanks. Okay, anything else on this? Ian? Yes, Ian? Hello, Ian?
So just to clarify, Jasmine, this, we're gonna rediscuss this again on the 4th,
Yes.
as far as the amendments and everything else. Like, I kind of agree with some of the stuff that's being said. I don't maybe necessarily agree within, you know, I think that as soon as it's safe for members of council to meet in person, I think that we should be meeting in person, and it should be streamed to the public.
Mhm.
You know, and I think there's lots of precautions that are being put in place, masks and all this other stuff, and social distancing that allows for that to occur. You know, I have a bit of an issue with somebody that wants to go to Florida for 6 months and
Agree.
Zoom into every meeting. I don't necessarily agree with that, or as far as I'm concerned anyways.
Mhm.
I think there's a percentage of your meeting should be in person when we're meeting in person.
Mhm.
That's for sure. I think it's essential to,
Mhm.
you know, as soon as it's safe to do so, that we all get back together and get things back on track and continue with, you know, using I don't have no problem with the platforms that we're using, and making sure that, you know, it's always, whether we're doing Zoom or not, and whether we're meeting in person, that it's always broadcasted to the constituents.
Yes. So yes, the August 4th meeting is, council will be able to make a decision on the future meetings and how you want those meetings to look. Council has already provided direction at a past meeting to look into and continue live streaming meetings. So that direction has already happened. It's also become a pretty common practice. I know with our Lanark County municipalities, I think all of them are continuing to live stream their meetings, whether or not they're meeting in person or continuing to electronic meet. So, yeah.
Okay, anything else? If not, I do have a motion that I'm going to read here.
Can I just go around in the circle really quick? Just, is everyone good with continuing the technology that we're using at the moment?
Yeah.
So YouTube and Zoom.
So I'll just go around, and I see Karen, Ian,
Yes.
Yeah.
and Jeff.
Yeah.
And yes, from me. So yes, anything else, Jasmine?
That's it.
Okay, so I have a motion here that council receive the following report. That is the electronic meeting participation procedural bylaw amendments. And that the following be approved: that council pass the amended procedural bylaw during the bylaw portion of the special meeting, and that council waive the requirement to provide notice of the amendment to the procedural bylaw. And so I need a mover and seconder for that. That's going to be moved by Karen and seconded by Ian. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, everybody. So Jasmine, now with the next bylaw, I just read it as it is.
Yes.
So I have a bylaw here I'm going to read. It is that the bylaw 3783/2020, being a bylaw to amend the procedural bylaw governing the proceedings of council and committees, the conduct of its members, and the calling of meetings, be read for second and third time passed, signed, and sealed this 29th day of July, 2020. All in favor? Sorry, a moved by Jeff. And seconded by Ian. And no more comments, all in favor? And that is carried. Jasmine? I also have another motion. I actually, before I do read this motion from the proceedings, Jasmine, do you know if we have any questions?
I do have a couple questions, yes.
Okay, so do you have them there?
Yes.
Okay,
So I have one question that says, I read the agenda and it states that it is a reasonable inference the public may attend virtually, and how are you planning in accomplishing this? So I guess to answer, if council's okay, I can answer that question. So
yes.
Yeah, the virtual attendance will be made through YouTube, whether or not it is either council meeting physically or council meeting electronically. So that's the attendance virtually. So there's a follow-up question for that, is that also we can submit questions to yourself or the township based on the agenda before the meetings. But I find often questions come to mind based on the discussion of council at the time of the meeting. Depending on how fast you can type, there is not always time to ask the question before adjournment. Is there a remedy for this, such as leaving the chat on? So that's the second question. So I think generally, we try to accommodate as many questions as possible. The chat was proving to be a bit challenging because there was a lot of comments that were not necessarily questions. At one meeting, we actually had over 95 comments. So we just don't have the capacity for staff to be able to go through that many comments at the end of the meeting and pick apart the questions. We could restrict the chat to questions only, which could provide another avenue for questions. So if council wants to provide direction to do that, that's okay. It's just we can't have, a commentary with the questions because it's just simply too much information for staff to go through at the end of the meeting.
Jeff?
I was just gonna say, like,
Yes, Jeff?
I was just gonna say, like, if people have questions, I mean, like, obviously, if it's not asked in time before the meeting's over, I mean, we can certainly address that question in the next meeting where we talk about anybody want to discuss other business from the previous meeting. I mean, we can say, yes, we had a question from that we want to answer, and we can definitely address it then too as well. So if there's ever I think that anybody in the public, if there's a speed time to doing it, don't rush, because I mean, like, you can answer your question, ask the question maybe the way you want to ask it. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but can we not easily answer that question in the next meeting when we talk about the previous meetings, like approving that?
You can, yep.
Just, I mean, this is another
But
suggestion.
the other thing,
sorry.
the other thing, if a question comes in at the end, and the question can still be answered the next day by our staff, because a lot of questions come in that we don't really have the answer right at bay anyway. So I usually, when a question comes in, they're not addressed to a certain person. It's just a question, and in many cases, in some cases, if it can't be answered at the end of a meeting because it just happened, then it could happen. The answer still could come the next day. So, Jeff, I wasn't sure because I think you, right at the end of when you were speaking, you kind of electronically went off for a second. So I wasn't sure whether you were finished speaking there.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just you were cutting out a little bit there. Okay, so Jasmine, was it just the question and the follow-up?
There's one more
Or
question.
did you have another question? Okay.
So another question is, if during a virtual meeting, due to technical problems, a quorum is no longer present, is the meeting canceled or does council wait for a maximum so many minutes before canceling the meeting? So I do, for the last discussion that we had about electronic meetings, I did put together like a decorum rules that were included in as an amendment to the procedure bylaw. So those do still apply regardless of whether or not it's an emergency or not. And in those rules, it's a 10-minute waiting period. If we lose quorum or have technical issues, there's 10 minutes to wait. Keeping in mind that council does have the ability to waive any, portions of your procedure bylaw. So if it's an important issue, council can wait longer than 10 minutes if they so chose. But it's a minimum 10 minutes, I guess is the answer.
And we can do that by consensus?
Yes.
We can do that at the time by consensus?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jasmine, for the questions. Okay, then I'm going to move on then. I have a motion. It was that bylaw 3784/2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on July the 29th, 2020. Be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed and sealed this 29th day of July, 2020. All in favor, moved by Karen and seconded by Jeff. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And the last motion I have is that the meeting do now adjourn at
6:24.
6:24?
Yep.
6:24 PM until August the 4th, 2020 at 6 PM, or until the call of the Reeve, subject to need. And that is moved by Karen and seconded by Ian. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of our meeting, and I think that I guess we can all say goodbye to each other till the 4th at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
See you next week. Yeah.
So good night.
In a couple days. Have a good long weekend.
You
See
too.
you guys. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.